And we're here to learn about the Lord and have a good time at the same time. God doesn't want us going around with a frown on our face all the time. He wants us to have the joy of the Lord and to show the joy of the Lord. But anyway, our services are tonight. We're Wednesdays. We have it at 7:30. Sundays we have it at 10:30, and you're welcome to come anytime. Um, the Last week we did a study on Mary Magdalene, and we brought up some stuff. We read stuff in scriptures, and we brought up stuff that I had researched, and I was trying, and I hope I accomplished this. I was trying to encourage everybody to study to show yourselves approved, because there's many Marys in the Bible, and some of them, like there's Mary Magdalene, and then there's some there that say Mary from Bethany, and then there's the Mary who's the sister to Lazarus and Martha, Mary and Martha, and some of them are mixed up with others that didn't actually name the names in scriptures. So I'm jumping to a conclusion, which may be a false one, but if it didn't give the name Mary on it, it might be a different Mary. Or it might, I mean, like for instance, the one that says this woman who was a sinner did such and such and such and such, and because it happened in about the same area and about the same time as Mary Magdalene, they attribute it to, they being historians and different ones, some of them attribute it to Mary Magdalene, and it may or may not have been her. I have not studied the history, and when you try to study the history, you have a hard time finding anything about Mary Magdalene. So anyway, we brought out what we could. She is mentioned, I think, in at least 3 different places in scriptures as Mary Magdalene. So we know those were her. And the rest of it is all guesswork, hearsay, rumors, whatever you want to call it, and some of it may be true and some of it may not. You just have to read and study for yourself and make up your own mind what you think. It's not going to make a difference in your relationship with God, but if you don't learn anything else, learn that she was present at the crucifixion. She was present at his death and his burial, and she was present during the time of his resurrection. And before all that, he delivered her from, I think it was 7 demons. And regardless of what kind of demons they were, it doesn't specify, or if it does, I didn't catch it. Anyway, we're going to change our focus to another Mary, because Mary Magdalene actually was from that area of Bethany. And so when they say Mary of Bethany, I think most of the time they mean Mary and Martha and Lazarus, but I could be wrong, because there's forget how it's pronounced, the city that she got her name Magdalene from, which isn't really a surname. It's more of a location description of which Mary is not too far from Bethany. And our Mary we're going to study today, she and her sister and her brother all lived together in the same house in Bethany. It only mentions those 3 siblings living in that house. It doesn't tell whether they were ever married or if they had any other relatives or anything like that I could find. You may have resources that help you find out more about her. But we're just going to read scriptures and see what we can glean from the scriptures that we read, and see what lessons we can learn from Mary, and that includes Martha and Lazarus, because they all lived in the same house, and they all were hospitable to Christ and his disciples every time they came through. You know, Jesus didn't really have a place to go stay in a lot of places, but there were people who loved him and followed him and let him and his disciples stay with them or made accommodations for them. And Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were three of those such people, and they were devoted to Christ and his disciples. So we'll find these. Um, I think I'm going to focus mostly. Okay, well, we're gonna look at the scriptures that I found in Luke and John, and I may bring out some other scriptures before it's all said and done. I'm not for sure. I may not have them in the right order. Um, and usually Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the four of the first, of the Gospels, they usually each have an account or refer to an account in their writings. Some of them don't always mention names, so there's like, okay, is this about the one I'm thinking of? Here we go again with different accounts. But you read and study to show yourself approved and make your own decisions about it. And like I said, it's not going to interfere with your relationship with God. But he wants us to focus on what happened, the main events that happened, and the result of that, and what lessons we would learn from that about how he likes us to be like, how our behavior and stuff. So let's turn to, we'll do Luke first. Luke chapter 10. And verses 38 through 42 is what I wrote down. Okay. Do I have a volunteer to start off? If not, I'll go on ahead and start it. But Luke 10, verses 38 through 42 is what we're looking at the moment. Okay, well, I'm going to start off in the Amplified, and then whoever wants to read second can do that. Now, while they were on their way, Jesus entered a village called Bethany, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And I was going to look up, and I ran out of time to see what was going on before that, because Jesus was teaching some people right before that. But anyway, and I would encourage you, when you read, to feel free to make the comments as you read if you want, or after, either way. Now, while they were on their way, Jesus entered okay, I read that. She had a sister named Mary, who seated herself at the Lord's feet and was continually listening to his teaching. But Martha was very busy and distracted with all of her serving responsibilities, and she approached him, Jesus, and said, "Lord, is it of no concern to you that my sister has left me to do the serving alone? Tell her to help me and do her part." But the Lord replied to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered and anxious about so many things, but only one thing is necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, that which is to her advantage, which will not be taken away from her." Now, I always wondered about those verses, because to me it did seem unfair that Mary was not helping her sister. And it wasn't just Jesus that they were serving. When you get to studying about it, the disciples, all 12 of them were there, I think, or it might have been 11 of them. I can't remember if it was before or after uh, Thomas left the group. But anyway, either way you look at it, she was serving more than just one person. And she had a lot of cooking to do and a lot of preparation to do. And whether she knew he was coming ahead of time or not, I haven't got a clue, because if it said, I didn't catch it. So we know how we are. When I was doing my research, it sounded to me like it was her house, and that they came to. And so she was basically the hostess. And, of course, the host or hostess is in charge of making sure of hospitality for visitors. And it was her job in as far as their culture was concerned, and even nowadays, the host or hostess of a party, it's their job to make sure people are fed, they're housed, they're comfortable, everything that needs to be done is done. And so she was feeling the weight of that, and she felt like she needed help, and Mary wasn't doing her part to help her. So she was complaining to Jesus, and since he was the one they were honoring, she went to him and wanted him to confront Mary and get on to her for not helping. And he didn't do that. Instead, he surprised her by letting her know that Mary had chosen the better thing, and he was not going to forbid her to do it. He was not going to forbid her from staying there and listening to what he had to say. So as we read further, we'll find other things to help us understand that more. But I'm going to encourage, I don't know, Josie, do you want to go next? And she's reading in the Living Word. Is that right?
I think so.
I do that every now and then. I can't remember which one I'm reading.
The Living Bible.
Yeah, the Living Bible. Okay.
Okay. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a village where a woman named Martha welcomed them into her home. Her sister Mary sat on the floor listening to Jesus as he talked. But Martha was a jittery type and was worrying over the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Sir, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "Martha, dear friend, you are so upset over all these details. There is really only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and I won't take it away from her."
So what do you think that one thing is?
Probably his teachings, I guess, on that.
Sitting at his feet and learning what she can, gleaning what she can. I that's how I got it. Yeah, I agree with you. All right, Dave, would you read it in the King James Version, please?
Now it came to pass, as they went, that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, which also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, "Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me." And Jesus answered and said unto her, "Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her."
Thank you, but thank both of you. They sound quite a bit alike. There's a little bit of differences there. You have anything to say about that, Mr. Dave, or Josie, got anything else to add?
Well, I mean, Jesus was telling Martha that Mary chose the good part, which is to um, listen to his words, which was life. And there's always going to be all the serving and the preparing and all that stuff going on all the time. She could have taken some time out to listen too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was a good comment. All right. Do you have anything else, Josie?
Oh, I was just thinking it's kind of off the record, I guess.
Can you speak up a little bit for me, please?
I'm not worried about it anyway. I was thinking she should have approached her sister about it, not Jesus. I think she might have got a better answer.
Well, and maybe she did, and it just didn't tell us.
Because if it was my sister, I would have said, "Come on and help."
She probably did, and her sister let her know she's going to stay and hear what he had to say.
Probably.
You know how brothers and sisters are. They don't always see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. And two women in the same house don't work too good because they always have different opinions.
Yeah.
On just about everything. So, but yeah.
Well, she's the one that invited them in her house, so she was the one that usually is the head over preparing things if you invite somebody.
Right. And in the Amplified, it does say it is her house.
Yeah.
It didn't say it. So I'm thinking maybe she was the oldest of the three, and that's why they declared it was her house, because of the way they did things back then. The older one lots of times in different situations was in control over whoever was on in the household. So, okay.
Why did Martha invite Jesus?
Well, when you read in other places, it sounds to me like every time that Jesus and his disciples came through Bethany, they were given the hospitality and open door to their home, and they invited them in on a regular basis. But now, whether this is the first time or whether there had been many times before that, I couldn't tell you because it's not real clear in what I read. So
It sounds like anybody who invites you, they're interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
They want to partake of your company. So, but then she turned it around, and she's busy about all the things.
Yeah, that's true too. He does make a point of letting her know that she's concerned about many things, but Mary has chosen the most important thing. So that didn't say that she wasn't interested in a most important thing. He was trying to help her get her priorities straight. If I took it right.
Probably. Yeah.
Do you have another comment, Miss Josie? No? Okay. Who wants to read? Actually, this is going to be a long reading, and so is the next one that we're going to do, but we'll probably only do the three because this one and the last one are quite a few verses. So, Josie, do you want to start us out this time, or you want? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say where. Let's go to John chapter 11. Might help to know where. There's a lot of verses and lots of chapters in this book. Lots of books in this book. It's a book of books. But we're gonna look at John chapter 11 verses 1 through 44. So we're not going to read the whole chapter, but there's a lot of verses.
44.
Yeah, 1 through 44.
Do you remember Mary who poured the costly perfume on Jesus' feet and wiped them with her hair? Well, her brother Lazarus, who lived in Bethany with Mary and her sister Martha, was sick. So the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, "Sir, your good friend is very, very sick." But when Jesus heard about it, he said, "The purpose of his illness is not death, but for the glory of God. I, the Son of God, will receive glory from this situation." Although Jesus was very fond of Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days and made no move to go to them. Finally, after the 2 days, he said to his disciples, "Let's go to Judea." But his disciples objected. "Master," they said, "only a few days ago the Jewish leaders in Judea were trying to kill you. Are you going there again?" Jesus replied, "There are 12 hours of a day, light every day, and during every hour of it a man can walk safely and not stumble. Only at night is there danger of a wrong step because of the dark." Then he said, "Our friend Lazarus has gone to sleep, but now I will go and waken him." The disciples, thinking Jesus meant Lazarus was having a good night's rest, said, "That means he is getting better." But Jesus meant Lazarus had died. Then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I wasn't there, for this will give you another opportunity to believe in me. Come, let's go to him." Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let's go too and die with him." When they arrived at Bethany, they were told that Lazarus had already been in his tomb for 4 days. Bethany was only a couple of miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the Jewish leaders had come to pay their respects and to console Martha and Mary on their loss. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Sir, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And even now it's not too late, for I know that God will bring my brother back to life again, if you will only ask him to." Jesus told her, "Your brother will come back to life again." "Yes," Martha said, "when everyone else does on Resurrection Day." Jesus told her, "I am the one who raises the dead and gives them life again. Anyone who believes in me, even though he dies, like anyone else, shall live again. He is given eternal life for believing in me and shall never perish. Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes, Master," she told him. "I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one we have so long awaited." Then she left him and returned to Mary, and calling her aside from the mourners, told her, "He is here and wants to see you." So Mary went to him at once. Now Jesus had stayed outside the village at the place where Martha met him. When the Jewish leaders who were at the house trying to console Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' tomb to weep, so they followed her. When Mary arrived where Jesus was, she fell down at his feet, saying, "Sir, if you had been here, my brother would still be alive." When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jewish leaders wailing with her, he was moved with indignation and deeply troubled. "Where is he buried?" he asked them. They told him, "Come and see." Tears came to Jesus' eyes. They were close friends. The Jewish leaders said, "See how much he loved him." But some said, "This fella healed a blind man. Why couldn't he keep Lazarus from dying?" And again Jesus was moved with deep anger. Then they came to the tomb. It was a cave with a heavy stone rolled across its door. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them. But Martha The dead man's sister said, "By now the smell will be terrible, for he has been dead 4 days." "But didn't I tell you that you will see a wonderful miracle from God if you believe?" Jesus asked her. So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, of course, but I said it because of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." Then he shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And Lazarus came, bound up in the grave cloth, his face muffled in a head swath. Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." And so at last many of the Jewish leaders who were with Mary and saw it happen finally believed on him. But some went away to the Pharisees and reported it to them.
Okay, that's good. That's a little farther than I meant,
Oh,
but
I
that
didn't.
was good. I didn't stop you because I thought, oh, I should have included those. So we went to verse 46 instead of 44. But that was awesome. Do you have any comments about what you read?
Well, no, I don't guess.
Not really? Okay. Dave, do you want to go next?
Okay.
Verses 1 through 46.
Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sisters sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, and he had heard therefore that he was sick. He abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou hither again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. These things said he, and after that he saith unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death. But they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest in sleep. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him. But Mary sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? She says unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe, that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. And when she had said, she went her way and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, The Master's come, and calleth for thee. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house, and comforted her, when they saw Mary that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth unto the grave to weep there. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit, and was troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold, how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused that even this man should not have died? Jesus therefore, again groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay on it. Jesus said, Take ye away the stone. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead for 4 days. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound about with a napkin. Jesus saith unto him, Loose him, and let him go. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary, and had seen the things which Jesus did, believed on him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees, and told them what things Jesus had done.
Thank you. A lot there, isn't there? You want to comment on it, Mr. Dave?
Well, it's actually kind of explains it for itself, and verse 2 explains which Mary wiped Jesus' feet for the message of Mary Magdalene.
Sounds like it to me. Yeah. Okay, well, I guess I'll go on ahead and read from the Amplified. Now, a certain man named Lazarus was sick, and somewhere in my studies it said Lazarus means beloved of God. He was from Bethany, the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. It was the Mary who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sister sent word to him, saying, Lord, he, our brother and your friend, whom you love, is sick. When Jesus heard this, he said, This sickness will not end in death. Underline that in your mind. But on the contrary, it is for the glory and honor of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved and was concerned about Martha and her sister and Lazarus, and considered them dear friends. So even when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed in the same place 2 more days. So that meant Lazarus was in the grave for 6 days. Then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, teacher, the Jews were only recently going to stone you, and you're thinking of going back there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of light in the day? Anyone who walks in the daytime does not stumble, because he sees by the light of the world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because there is no light in him." He said this, and after that said, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him." The disciples answered, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover." However, Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he was referring to natural sleep. So then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, who was called Didymus, the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Well, let us go too, that we may die with him." He was kind of being sarcastic, I think, by the way it's worded. It doesn't say he was, but, he was doubting Thomas after all. So there's the answer to my question. He was still with them at the time. All right. So when Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany, well, if my math is correct, all of it together was 4 to 6 days, depending on how you read it, I guess. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to see Mary and Martha to comfort them concerning the loss of their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, while Mary remained sitting in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give to you." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise from the dead." Martha replied, "I know that he will rise from the dead in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in, adheres to, trusts in, and relies on me as Savior will live even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me as Savior will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I have believed and continue to believe that you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Anointed, the Son of God, he who was destined and promised to come into the world, and it is for you that the world has waited." After she said this, she left and called her sister Mary, privately whispering to her, "The teacher is here and is asking for you." And when she heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. So when the Jews who were with her in the house comforting her saw how quickly Mary got up and left, they followed her, assuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her sobbing, and the Jews who had come with her also sobbing, he was deeply moved in spirit to the point of anger at the sorrow caused by death. Which gives me I always wondered, who was he angry at? Was he angry at the people for not believing or what? But according to the Amplified, he was angry at death because it had swallowed up Lazarus and caused such grief. Anyway, and troubled. So, and said, "Where have you laid him?" They said, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, "See how he loved him as a close friend." But some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the blind eyes have kept this man from dying?" So Jesus, again deeply moved within to the point of anger, approached the tomb. So that verse right there makes me believe he was angry because of their lack of belief. He was angry that they didn't believe. It was a cave, and a boulder was lying against it to cover the entrance. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an offensive odor, for he has been dead 4 days. It is hopeless." Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you believe in me, you will see the glory of God, the expression of his excellence?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus raised his eyes towards heaven and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me and listen to me, but I have said this because of the people standing around, so they may believe that you have sent me and that you have made me your representative." When he had said this, he shouted with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" Out came the man who had been dead, his hands and his feet tightly wrapped in burial clothes, linen strips, and with a burial cloth wrapped around his face. Jesus said to them, "Unwrap him and release him." So then many of the Jews who had come to be with Mary and who were eyewitnesses of what Jesus had done believed in him. But some of them went back to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. It pretty much does say what it means. I've just I was kind of interested in the fact that it angered Jesus when that the people, after all this time, still did not believe. So many of them did not believe. There was a few, but even Mary and Martha didn't totally believe, or they would not have been quite so upset that they found him dead. They hadn't considered he might raise Lazarus from the dead. They knew he could heal Lazarus and that he could keep him from dying. It's just they didn't recognize he had the power to make him live again. And after all of his teaching, and how many of those people had learned of what Jesus had talked to them, but for some reason, even though they learned what he said, they did not believe. And that's an ongoing problem. We can read scriptures and we can believe it happened, but we still have a hard time believing it can still happen. I know I do. Maybe you don't, but I do. So anyway, that's the account in John. All right, and now let's go to chapter 12 in John. And we are going to go over verses 1 through 11. Chapter 12, 1 through 11. I guess I haven't read verse yet, so I'll go on ahead and read. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus went to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom he had raised from the dead. So they gave a supper for him, where Martha was serving, and Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table. So not only was he raised from the dead, but he was present at the dinner. Then Mary took a pound of very expensive perfume of pure nard, and I was going to look that up, and I didn't. I don't know if anybody knows what nard is, but it's whatever it is, it's expensive. You can bet on that, because it says it's very expensive perfume, some kind of perfume. And she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Now, there's a discrepancy there between the one where the woman who was called a sinner wiped Jesus' feet with her tears. So there's a thought, if one of them wiped with tears and the other one wiped with perfume, then perhaps it is two different women, and that's why the one who was called a sinner was not, her name was not spoken in the Bible. So there's a thought to think about and to study. You believe it how you want to. Before I read the rest of this, another thought is, when you're in a car accident, they get everybody that witnessed the car wreck, they get their story on what happened. And each person tells it according to how they understood it, according to what they saw from where they were standing. And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I can't remember, I think Matthew was like an attorney or a lawyer or something. And I think Luke was a doctor. And I can't remember if Mark and John were anything other than fishermen. Anyway, the point is, we tend to tell things according to how we perceive it. And so that's also something in scriptures, that each book might have a different rendition of the same story, or there might be two different similar stories where it's not clear to us who did what because they didn't mention the name in one of them. So that's just something to consider, and maybe they are the same person, and one was there and saw that she had precious stuff in the alabaster box, and another one might have not seen what she actually used to wipe his feet and thought it was her tears because she didn't ask for water. So I don't know. I really don't know, but I do know reason why at a car accident they get all these different witnesses. They come to the conclusion that the truth of the matter is in the middle of all of it. Everybody's account is a little bit different, but the truth is there somewhere, and it's up to them to figure out what the truth is in order to deal with the accident, or the cause of it. So I'm thinking the same principle applies in scriptures when you have more than one book in the Bible that are describing a certain incident. The one who was given the words to write has their personality, their outlook mixed in with the story itself, the truth of it. So
you would think it was the same Mary because her sister was there, Martha.
Yeah.
And it was in the same celebration.
But was Martha her sister with the first one when they were called her a sinner? That's my question. Or was that a different woman? But she was in near Bethany, I think, when she did that at a dinner.
They said it was the same one on the other chapter. It was one that wiped Jesus' feet with her hair. So that was Martha's sister.
Right, and that. Yeah, but I'm just saying some of the details are a little bit different. So is it just the perception of the writer, or were we dealing with two different Marys or two different women? Because the one that said a woman that was a sinner, they didn't give the name of that woman in that, and I forget where it was located at. I might have it written down in all this mess here, but anyway, it's worth studying it out if you're interested or not. We have succeeded in our Bible study if we get you to study somewhere at home. It's the way I look at it, and we've succeeded if we got you to think about something you hadn't thought about before. So the question to study is: were the two women two different accounts? Were they of the same woman, or was there two women that did similar things to Jesus' feet? So, and from my research, I'm still not 100% confident either way. So, but I had never thought about the fact that there could have been two women that just treated him the same way, but it was still a sign of devotion and love, and that part was true for both women. So anyway,
They still talk about the poor in this version. In this instance, they still mention the poor always being with you, and that the ointment could have been sold for the poor and all
right.
stuff. So it's the same scenario with a lot of different words.
Well, and if that's true, then it probably was just it was the same woman, but different account. And so it was told according to, maybe maybe the one that just called her a sinner didn't know her name. I don't know. I don't have a clue. But anyway, it's interesting to find out that it's not just this story. When you go to some of the other stories that are told, there's little differences here that probably don't matter because it's not really the important part of the verse of the Bible. But, it's not important. The details we're thinking of are not really that important. It doesn't matter if there was one Mary or two Marys or two women. One was Mary and one was somebody else, and they just didn't put her name in there. What's important is what actually happened and why it happened and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like Jesus saying, that's fine that Martha was concerned about all the details of the dinner, but Mary chose the better thing, and that was to sit at the feet of Jesus and learn what she could, because the things that they needed to do for the dinner would still be there later. But after Jesus left his natural body, he would not, in the natural body, would not be there with them. So that was a priority. So anyway, just a thought. I think I read chapter 12, verse 3, where Mary takes the expensive ointment and wipes Jesus' feet with her hair. Okay, then verse 4 is, but Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was going to betray him, said, now this is the one that's critical. Between him and doubting Thomas, talk about negative people. Doubting Thomas said, let's just go with him and we'll all die together. And then Judas goes, well, why was the perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? So he's criticizing her use of that expensive perfume. Now, and in churches, you find critics everywhere. And that's not a good thing, because I know of people who refuse to go to church anymore because of attitudes and criticisms that people have done. And if you look at the person speaking, they have plenty to be criticized for themselves. They've got a beam in their eye, but they're going to try to tell other people what's wrong with them. So anyway, I'm getting off on a rabbit trail. Anyway, so he said that. Now he said this not because he cared about the poor. See, even his reason to say it was wrong. He didn't care about the poor, for he had never cared about them. But because he was a thief, and since he had the money box serving as treasurer for the 12 disciples, he used to pilfer what was put in it. So he considered her pouring that perfume on Jesus' feet stealing from him, because he felt like it really should be available to him to collect so he could get his hands in on it. So that's bad. So he had that wrong things in his heart. So Jesus said, let her alone so that she may keep the rest of it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. A large crowd of Jews learned that he was there at Bethany, and they came, and not only because of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to kill Lazarus also, because on account of him, Many of the Jews were going away from the teaching and traditions of the Jewish leaders and believing in Jesus, following him as Savior and Messiah. Okay, there's still more to it, but we're stopping at verse 11. Um, how greedy can people, they're greedy. Even people who claim to know the Lord and serve the Lord, some of them are greedy. Not all of them, but some of them, and they give church a bad name. These Jewish leaders, they had a good thing going for them, they thought, and they see where, with Jesus doing what he did, that he's proved he is who he says he is. And they feel threatened, and so they wanted to kill him. Because the people are starting to believe in Jesus now. And they did not like that. And that's my comment. Who wants to read chapter 12, verse 1 through 11 next in their Bible? You want to do it, Josie? Okay.
6 days before the Passover ceremonies began, Jesus arrived in Bethany, where Lazarus was, the man he had brought back to life. A banquet was prepared in Jesus' honor. Martha served, and Lazarus sat at the table with him. Then Mary took a jar of costly perfume made from the essence of nard, and anointed Jesus' feet with it and wiped them with her hair. And the house was filled with fragrance. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who would betray him, said, "That perfume was worth a fortune. It should have been sold and the money given to the poor." Not that he cared for the poor, but he was in charge of the disciples' funds and often dipped into them for his own use. Jesus replied, "Let her alone. She did it in preparation for my burial. You can always help the poor, but I won't be with you very long." When the ordinary people of Jerusalem heard of this arrival, they flocked to see him and also to see Lazarus, the man who had come back to life again. Then the chief priests decided to kill Lazarus too, for it was because of him that many of the Jewish leaders had deserted and believed in Jesus as their Messiah.
What comments do you have? I just want to say, because somebody's a church leader doesn't mean they are knowing and doing all that's right. We tend to think that if you're behind this pulpit teaching or preaching that you're perfect. Jesus was the only one that was perfect, and we just need to keep that in mind. And that God encourages us to study to show ourselves approved, and I believe that's in Proverbs. So, well, if you think of something, speak up whenever you think of it, but I'm going to let Dave read from the King James Version, verses 1 through 11, please.
Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Then saith one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and had the bag, and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, let her alone, against the day of my bearing hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Much people of the Jews therefore knew that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus.
Okay. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, that's a pretty good alternative way of saying what we read earlier.
It's true. I just now found the reference that I wrote down that has pretty much got me convinced that the simple woman is a different woman from Mary Magdalene or Mary, the sister of Lazarus. Let's look in Luke chapter 7, verse 36. I'm going to read it from the Amplified. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house in the region of Galilee and reclined at the table. Now there was, notice they're at the Pharisee's house. Now where Mary from Bethany broke the expensive container of perfume and wiped Jesus' feet with the perfume in her hair, that was in Bethany at Martha's house, and it says that clearly in that chapter. This one says clearly that one of the Pharisees asked Jesus to eat with him, and he, Jesus, went into the Pharisee's house. Well, Martha was not a Pharisee. And they reclined at the table. Now there was a woman in the city who was known as a sinner, and when she found out that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's house, she brought an alabaster vial of perfume. And standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began wetting his feet with her tears. So not only did she anoint him with the expensive perfume, but she also anointed him with her tears, and wiped them with her hair of her head, and respectfully kissed his feet as an act signifying both affection and submission, and anointing them with a perfume. Okay, so I guess she wiped with her tears first, and then she put perfume on there. Now when Simon the Pharisee, who had invited him, saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what sort of woman this is who is touching him, that she is a notorious sinner, an outcast devoted to sin. Anyway, and we read that last week, and when we were studying it out, how he did all of his criticism, and then Jesus looked at him and said, you didn't even do the common courtesies for me. And this woman took care of them. So, and expressed her love and devotion. So I'm of a mind that I think I now believe that there's two separate women, because one did that devotional honoring thing to Jesus' feet at the Pharisee's house, and another one did a similar thing at Martha's house. So to me, Martha's not a Pharisee, so that couldn't have been her house. And I would find it very hard for somebody to give an account that was so totally different that it could mean anything other than they were two different women. But you do your own study and you come to your own conclusion, because for years I believed that the sinning woman that was at the Pharisee's house was the same Mary that was at Martha's house. And this proves I was wrong. So, all those years I've been believing it wrong. So anyway, again, I encourage you to study, to show yourself approved, not only the scriptures, because the scriptures are not going to go against each other for the main thoughts and everything. But there are other books out there besides the Bible that are history books, and if you can find any of those that are telling the truth of the Bible history, you might get some more insight on some of the things. But anyway, that's all I have for tonight, unless somebody's got more comments to make. And if you have any more comments, make them, and if not, we'll go to prayer requests.